wait till you hear Kate Hudson about her movie on today's Joanna Langfield's People Report.
We're on tape, you better watch out for it.
This 60-second slice of travel heaven is brought to you by Travelocity.com. The people who would like to remind you that Travelocity you can go virtually
This was
anywhere.
self-defense.
Note the
I
name,
couldn't do any gestures while you were
Travelocity.com.
talking.
From the get-go, we wanted to be the world's best travel site. Hence the word travel embedded in our name. We are not selling furniture or CDs or auctioning off rare stuffed animals. You go to Travelocity, you get travel. Air travel, ship travel, hotel travel, resort travel, car travel. You get over 700 airlines, more than 48,000 hotels, 5,000 cruise and vacation packages, and in excess of 50 rental car companies. You can even use our new feature called Dream Maps. Say you have a budget of $300. You put in the amount, and Travelocity's incredibly powerful search engine scans the travel world, and in a few seconds you have all the destinations you can reach for your budget. With Travelocity, you possess the keys to the travel kingdom. Travelocity.com. Go virtually anywhere. AOL keyword, travel.
She is the it girl of the year, almost famous, as Kate Hudson told me. You know, she was just overwhelmed by this one from the start.
It's really difficult for me, and it's difficult for me to watch myself. And when I saw the movie, I found myself getting sucked into the actual film, and then I would pull back and be like, "Oh my God, this is so insane!" Because I remember it so vividly. It was such a huge experience for me, and the stuff that was cut out, I was disappointed because I knew how much fun we had doing it, and so when I was so filled with those emotions, I was almost numb the first time I saw it, and walked out, and I looked at people that I came with, and I said, that was great, right? I mean, that was really great. Am I crazy? That was amazing. And have I lost my mind? I mean, is it not? I mean, you tell me. I don't know. And then, of course, the cell phone was handed to me, and it was Cameron, and I just lost it.
Yeah. Am I crazy? I don't know. I love that. From themovieminute.com, I'm Joanna Langford.
Do you like Asian music? Would you like to know what is going on in the Asian community? Then you need know. You must listen to Bobosh Creole with me, your host, Franz Stigler, every Saturday between 9 to 10 on WALE 990 AM. I will bring you the best in music, news, health information, and much more. So tune in every Saturday between 9 to 10 on WALE 990 AM with me, Franz Stigler, at the Bobosh Creole.
I feel like I'm going to confession.
It's time to Ask the Business Doctor. Have your questions ready. Here's your host, Alex Shibanoff.
Welcome to Ask the Business Doctor at WALE AM 990. This is Mike Maynard. I'm substituting for Alex Shibanoff tonight. This is a show that asks the musical question, how to succeed in business, but you do have to try, unless your name is W. Tonight I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, as well as business advisor, Fabio Deponte, co-founder and of Deponte Design.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? The reason I asked Fabio here is because one of the least understood aspects of business is business design. How do you look? What sort of advertising do you do? Creating brochures and logos and things like that. And hopefully over the course of the next hour, we'll help clarify some of those issues and how he goes about doing what he does. The phone number here is 1-877-621-9253. So let's start with the topic at hand. Now, you're my business advisor. You do the graphics for my company, Aspen Partners, and you do a wonderful job. When you first start with a new client, what's the procedure? What do you have to do?
We start off with we have an initial meeting, and at that meeting we discuss the needs of the company, and there's a whole series of questions that we run through. We discuss the name, we discuss the clients, the prospective customers, we discuss budgets, we discuss how the logo is going to be used, And from that interview, we then go out and do research, depending on the market that the particular company is in, and we see what the competition is and how the competition looks, and then we propose a look or a name or a combination of looks and names that would best position that company according to where the company wants to go.
Okay. Now, in the process of creating a name for, I presume, it could be for the company itself, it could be for a product or service or along those lines. What sort of process do you use to do that?
Well, to establish a name for a product, you need to know where it's going to compete, how it's going to be displayed, and then you need to go out and you have to do some extensive research as to what kind of shelf space that's going to occupy, if it is going to occupy shelf space, whether it's something that's never going to occupy shelf space and it's sold on a one-to-one basis, like like jewelry and that type of thing, rather than being a bottle of water. And then from that, you would see what colors are being used now, and you'd go out and you'd pick colors and names and design the labels so that when it is sitting on a shelf, for instance, a person would not necessarily walk by. It would be more attractive, or at the very least different from the other competition on the shelf.
Well, that brings to an interesting point. Now, in your point of view, what makes good design versus bad design? Now, you mentioned attention if it's sitting on a retail shelf. But let's say you do business to business, or you're doing industrial products. Are there different sorts of factors that you have to enter into?
Design is a very peculiar term because the more attention getting doesn't necessarily mean that the design is loud or the design space is cluttered. What it means is that it communicates what you want it to, either by the choice of typeface, combination of typeface and maybe some graphic to go with it. And it's attention grabbing in the contrast of what we call negative space, that is space on a page or on a label that has nothing on it, versus color and graphic space.
Well, that's one thing that I have learned from you, is the value of white space. I think the tendency of people who are not business artistically minded tend to want to cram as much as possible and everything in order to get quote-unquote big value for what they're doing. And what you told me is it's exactly the opposite.
Right, and good designers fall prey to this. There's a story where they were having a design conference, and the designer got so carried away that the people that received the brochures couldn't find the date or time or place because of the colors and the busyness of the design. I mean, it was very pleasing when you opened it up and it was attention-getting, but the real important message, which was the time, place, was so obscured that nobody knew where to go.
Do you find that sort of thing often, or is
it happens occasionally, and for us in the business, it becomes quite funny. But when you own the company that's putting on an event, and you've just paid $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for something like that, plus the mailing, and nobody knows where to go, it doesn't appear to be too funny.
When you're dealing with a company initially, like the first time you and I met and we were going over as with partners, how do you work with somebody or a company that doesn't have any real artistic sensibility? Like, from the beginning, I wouldn't know good versus bad, why you do this instead of that. So what's part of the process that you use to sort of educate your client along those lines?
You have to be careful when you use the term educating a client. The fact that they're in business, implies that they're on the ball. So you never want to be condescending. But what you really do is you point out, even if they're not aware of what is good or bad, you use examples of what doesn't work and what does work. Because design, there is good design, there's great design, but a lot of it is just different because you have a different person executing the design. So it's education in the sense of what works best, and it's difficult sometimes because the client wants instant answers. So here you are in the meeting and you're asking questions to get your parameters to kind of have an idea of where the design is going. And a lot of people want, well, how are you going to do this? The problem is that the designer hasn't gone through the creative process yet for even he or her to know where they're going with it. It's kind of like floating in this creative space, and they need to go away to the little cave and draw it up and then come back and say, see, this is what I'm thinking. And it's hard for visual people sometimes to communicate that verbally.
So that was the musty smell I got from you originally. It's coming out of the little cave.
Yes, it came out of a very creative place.
A creative place. When a lot of business people, including myself, and I said, you did have to educate me. We all know how stupid I can be on a lot of issues. But when they hear the word creative process, they tend to think of what gives off symbols of is this, you're dealing with an artiste, you're dealing with someone who worries about whether something is mauve versus chartreuse or things like that. I don't know if you've run into that experience, but in talking to other business people, I have run into that. How do you, as part of the education process, what I'm getting at is, how do you get them to understand that this is a business process, that what you're doing has a direct impact on business, and the artistic sensibilities are part of it, but they're sort of secondary to the other issues?
The way that we operate is that's part of the initial interview or initial meeting. Because if you let the client know that all the decisions you are making are going to be based on marketing and how the colors, design, or whatever you're planning on doing is based on a tangible business return, it kind of lessens their idea that you're going to go off and go play in the daisies and come up with some outrageous thing, because we really have the welfare of the client and company at heart, because for them to be successful, then we're successful. And if what we do does not work for them, then that means that we didn't do what we were paid to do.
Okay, so then how would you measure that later on?
You measure it. Well,
let me give you a point here. It's like a lot of times companies will ask us, as with partners, well, is how successful were you? And a lot of times the answer is we don't know. Because even if we go in and help a company with business processes or start a new initiative, we may not execute it, we may not follow through. So sometimes, sometimes more times than I care to admit, is that we've done the very best work, but the fact that the client didn't execute it through, or they didn't follow procedures and processes that we started, then it doesn't bear as much fruition as it would normally.
Well, what we do is a little different, because in the consulting, we produce a tangible product, and that can take the form of an ad, it can take the form of a brochure, it can take the form of a direct mail campaign. And in the case of a direct mail campaign, you know whether it's successful or not because of the little coupons you get back. In an ad campaign, if it has a circle or a bingo, what they call a bingo card, you know how many people saw the ad and request more information.
Just in case somebody doesn't understand, I do from being in marketing. What is a bingo card?
A bingo card is a little card that is usually inserted in a magazine that has little numbers on it that refer to the advertisers in the magazine, and the readers will circle whichever product they're interested in.
Okay. We have to take our first break now. So you're listening to The Business Doctor here on WALE 99. You can tell it's when you buy the dentures direct from the doctor, you know. And please, welcome for your phone calls at 877-621-9253.
The Business Doctor will be right back after these messages. We now return to Ask the Business Doctor with your host, Alex Shibanoff.
No, this is not Alex Shibanoff. It's Mike Maynard of Asthma Partners, pinch hitting this week. However, this is Ask the Business Doctor, which each week attempts to save the whales, provide a cure for cancer, and help you do business or conduct your career better. I'm sitting here with Fabio Deponte, the co-owner of Deponte Design, and we're discussing how to go about establishing an image, how to work with a professional business designer with image and other sorts of issues along those lines. Now, when we're leaving off, you were dealing with me, Mr. Non-artiste, or someone with no artistic sensibilities. We're discussing what makes good design versus bad design, and you're discussing a little bit about the process that you go through. Now, we discussed the creative process, which is also an issue for us as business management consultants. The reason I maintain that part of what people hire us for is this creative process. I mean, it's based on experience, it's based on what you do for other companies, but there's a certain amount of creativity in the sense of being able to fit the solution or fit the initiative or something like that to the company, to the style, and what's feasible to do and what's not feasible to do. You know, oftentimes we do that through discussion and just being able, it's almost a visual thing. You know, like you see it or you don't. What's it like for you when you're sitting down in your creative process to do this?
For me, I keep it all in the air. Sometimes I think of myself as a juggler, and I hold the interview, as we spoke about earlier, and the client, and the market, and their competitors, and the things that I think will fit in the air for the longest amount of time that I possibly can.
Okay. Till it sort of congels.
Until it either congels or I run up against the deadline. And it's amazing of how focused you can get on deadline. But irregardless, you have to keep it. In other words, if you dig a lot of people go in, and I've been in a situation where we've gone in with account executives, and a salesman's drive is to get somebody to sign off on anything, to say, yes, I want to buy that. So that when you're discussing and you're trying to get to the meat of the problem and to design something, the salesman is offering suggestions, like we can do this, or we can do that, or we can do the other thing. And what they actually end up doing is circumventing the creative process, because they're setting the customer's mind onto a line that may not work, or an idea that may not work.
And so they're coming in with preconceived notions.
Right.
Saying, we want this is the way the image or
Yeah,
the
or we should make it like this, or
here's a message we want to get, whether it's right for them or not.
right. And I, in my experience, I've worked both as a staff, art director, and designer, and a lot of times the account executive will come in, and after meeting with a client, and they'll bring in somebody else's brochure, and they'll say, here, the client likes this, he wants something like this. Well, that automatically cuts you off from whatever ideas you've had, because now you're preset to this. And actually, the account executive is, in that situation, is actually doing a lot of harm rather than letting it float to see what you come up with.
Well, there is on one hand the issue of practicality. I know a lot of times when we go into a company, there's certain things we would like to do, but we know is not going to be palatable. At least at this point in time, the political situation and so on. I mean, the hardest thing for me to deal with, and I'm the account exec like you are, is, gee, we want this, and this, but we can only spend X. And X is usually about half or a third of what really calls for. So what do you do? What do you do in that situation?
Well, the X factor is always there. It never goes away, and if anybody is in the business and thinks that they're going to get unlimited budgets, that's a dream. But the creativity comes in doing excellent work that delivers the message at a price that everybody can live with. Because you don't want to kill the golden goose, as the Germans say. That's why they don't have strikes.
Gee, there's only gooses in geese in Germany. Huh?
Yep.
Yes. Or golden ones at least.
Golden ones.
Yeah. No, but along those lines, I mean, there is a line where you have to do what's practical, and sometimes it means scaling back. But in the case of someone who is starting from scratch in a new business, or they've been in business a short time but they haven't really established an identity, they need a logo, they may need a new name, or they need a slogan, something like that. They need an image. They probably need some degree of marketing promotion program. How do you do that? Or is it just a case at some point in time you just have to say, sorry, can't do it?
Well, you can do it. There's several ways of doing it. You can have them go into it a whole hog all at once, or you can build, and you can start with. You can design the whole look or the whole campaign, and then build up to it gradually, so that as they build their business, they're also able to afford what you're doing, but they have a long view plan or a long range look at their business. It doesn't help anybody to have them go broke when they can't afford to do the advertising.
Generally that's the case, but sometimes sometimes hey, we can eat too, you know.
Yeah. We try to avoid that.
We try to avoid that, yes, at all costs. We're not mercenary. We're just semi-mercenary. That's all. We're going to have to take a break in a minute, so I don't want to get into a new line of discussion. Because I'm not artistic in nature, and I have a horrible eye, I know what I like when I see it. But in working with me, I don't exactly get how you come about doing these things. And so when we come back from the break, let's talk about that a little bit, because I'm putting myself in the role as a business owner. And I'm working with you for the first time, or working with my first business design person. And so what I'm trying to deal with, and hopefully it's helpful to the audience, is to work with you successfully, and what's sort of the rules and the limits, and how you should really work together. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, and here's Mark Donahue with weather, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
The Business Doctor will be right after the Business Doctor. Your host, Alex Shinoff.
Welcome back. We've reached the halfway mark in this week's show, and what we want you to do now is put your hands on the radio, and because we're about to magically heal all of your business problems and issues, and if you believe that, call us here at 877-621-9253, and Fabio and I have some swampland for you too. But in any case, as before the break, this is Fabio Deponte of Deponte Design, and I'm Mike Maynard, substituting for Alex Shibanoff. We're talking about the process that you go through in dealing with the fledgling business owner, and some of the issues associated in how you need to manage the client, but the client needs to be able to work with you. Are there any suggestions or tips that you have along those ways?
It's important that the client have an idea of where they're going. Because we have a saying in the business that we're only as good as the information we get. And if the client has no direction, like they may have a name and they may have money and they may even have a very good product, but you need a direction. You need to have an idea where you want to go. And when you present something and somebody and you get the idea of well, I know what I like, when I see it. Well, that is almost like a guaranteed opening of not getting anything that you're going to like, because it's almost it's a target. It's a moving target. See, the human psyche is set up that you have a natural affinity for things that are good looking. That's why everybody agrees on a good looking model. Most people agree on a good looking car. Good design, the brain and your eye is set up to recognize it. That's why people say, I know what I like when I see it. Now, the job of a designer, okay, when somebody says, I know what I like when I see it, is to find out everything that the person likes. Because then it gives you a good background as to where the person is coming from and what that person reacts to. Now, just because the client likes something or reacts to something doesn't mean that his market is going to like or react to something. That's why you have some people that go on television and they own companies and they do ads and they're very successful, and there are other people that go on television and the company bombs because there is no connect between the audience and the owner. And you have to be careful on how you present that, but I think most people, if you use enough examples and if you use enough visual examples, I think you can convince them of the error of their ways. Sometimes you can't, and you kind of swallow and you do the best possible job you can. Or you resign the commission. I mean,
In designing a logo, and there are plenty, you're dealing with a scratch piece of paper.
Mhm.
How do you go about the creative process to design the logo and get it to be part of this image and message and representation of the company?
The name plays a large factor, obviously.
Well, let me ask you about, and we've gotten tons of compliments over this, but when you were designing the Azimuth Partners logo.
Right. Okay. Azimuth Partners. We picked on the letter A because it's the first letter in the name, and because of our discussion, it came out that you were basically dealing with strategies, and also the azimuth was some kind of, if I recall, was some kind of intersection between points, which kind of also leaned towards direction and all of this kind of thing. So, given that, and playing around with direction and symbols that symbolize direction, we came up with the semi-transparent arrows that form the letter A, which form the dominant feature of the title. And it worked very well, because not only did it remind you of the company name, but it also visually told you what the story is without necessarily having anything else happen. And that's what a logo is supposed to do.
Well, you also chose the right color blue for it. I presume it was sky blue because it's a nautical and marino and marine symbol, or the name means point it, to get from where you are versus the horizon. And I thought the color and also how the logo was laid out with the message sort of indicated that. Is that part of the process? Is that part of your thinking process?
Color plays a very important part, and it also depends, and a lot of it depends on how the logo is going to be used. In a consulting company, it needs to be friendly, solid, reliable, and confidence building. And it doesn't need to appear in neon, and it doesn't need to appear on machinery, and it doesn't need to appear on airplanes. So the whole use of it is restricted in that sense.
So you didn't factor in our corporate jet.
Yes. Yes.
Or a corporate tricycle.
A corporate tricycle. Yeah. Whereas for a larger company, the logo itself, if that was a logo that was going to appear on a product, or if it was going to appear on some signage, it would not be strong enough to carry itself.
Now, this is part of the program where we usually go into having business tips. And there's one thing that I learned from you that I'd like you to discuss a little more, which is the value of persistence in what you're doing as far as marketing and look like that. Can you discuss that?
Sure. The thing that we always tell our clients is that they need to be consistent in their message and consistent in their look. And that means that your colors need to be constant, your typefaces need to stay the same, your ads need to have a recognizable look. the smaller the company, the more control and